Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this session where we will dive deep into the Dynamics 365 for F&O MCP server and how that kind of also enables us to do a lot more low code without doing any pro code than were able to do before. My name is Ted Olson. I am the CTO for Capgemini's Nordics Dynamics 365 practice, and I'm also a fast track recognized solution architect. Let's get started. In my last video, we went through the virtual entities for F&O and how to build Power Platform stuff on the F&O data. Now, when running that scenario, there has always been a small limitation, which is that it communicates through the data entities, but all fields and all tables from F&O might not be in the data entities. And there's also hundreds of actions within F&O, which you can't access directly in the data entities without writing pro code. Of course, you can build out data entities with pro code, and you can add batch jobs that trigger some things from the data entities with pro code. But if you want to do this 100% low code, like myself, coming from the low code side, you kind of get a bit stuck with that. Now, what the MCP server does and the headless ERP is that it's not going through the data entities. It has opened up a totally new layer that's more like walking through the system, just like a user would do in the system. And it can trigger any action, and it has direct access to all of the fields, all of the tables that the data entities and the virtual entities for F&O does not have. But what we will uncover in this session also are all of the scenarios where you also can combine them two together. So let's take a look. The best way to do this is to have a good process that we can run it with. So I asked my colleague Ulrika Stenovik, who you might know from the community as the Finance Viking, about a good process, and she gave me the prepayment invoice process. So that we will use. So what we will do is to start taking a look at that process, and then we will dig deep into the MCP way of doing it as well. So the first thing we will do is that we will go to sales and marketing and find our sales orders. And then I'll find a good sales order here. Plain sales order with 2 items on. And we'll go in and create a prepayment proposal. We'll set the prepayment type to percentage. We'll set the percentage value to 50, and we'll set a sales category in here to prepayments. Okay, good, and we'll save this. So let's go back. In order then to kind of also create the prepayment invoice, we need to have confirmed the sales order. So we go in and press confirm sales order. As you guys can see, this is a lot of actions in here, and that's kind of why I like this process scenario as well, because this would be really hard to do just through the virtual entities without writing a lot of code into the data entities in F&O. What we will do now is that we will go back and create the prepayment invoice. And we will post that. Now, as you guys have seen, a lot of steps, a lot of actions, a lot of tables involved here. So let's try doing this with the MCP server. What we will start by doing is going to copilotstudio.microsoft.com, and we will create a new agent. We can create the agent from blank. Now let's start with giving the agent a name. So we will go in and call this D365 prepayment agent. And then we need to connect this agent to the MCP server. So what you would do then is that you would go to Tools up here. And you would add a tool. Now you can press this MCP tab in here, and you would have the Dynamics 365 ERP MCP server. And you have two ones of them. One called Dataverse and one called FNO. This one actually is the old one that goes through virtual entities and the data entities. So it wouldn't give us all of the extra bonuses that I talked about before. So use this one instead, called FNO and Ops, and you need to connect it. Now it's in there and it's connected. The next thing you might want to go and do is to go in here and change the model. Because when you're running this, the recommended model is the Cloud Sonnet model. So it might be by default that your tenant is locked down, so you can't use it, and then you need to go in and change some of the settings. There are some good Microsoft Learn documentation on how to enable the Cloud Sonnet model for your template as well. You might want to add some instructions to your agent as well. What I used to do is actually just go into the main documentation for this. I will post the link to the chat later on, where they have added a good text in here, and just copy that. I think this pretty much covers everything when it comes to working with this MCP server, at least. So I can add it in there. It tells it a lot about how to act within the context of FNO and the context of FNO forms and so on. So now we have that in. Super. Now we can actually kind of start chatting with this data. So the first thing that we will do is add a text that looks something like this. Now, what do we tell it? Create a prepayment proposal for sales order, this number, in legal entity USMF. Do not create sales order records. That one I added because there has been a couple of scenarios when I've been running this where it has been trying to create the sales records as well. Set payment type to percentage. That was just what we did previously in the scenario. Set the percentage value to 50%. That we also did when we ran this. Set the sales category to payments. That we also did. Confirm the sales order. From the sales order in the invoice tab on the sales order form, create the prepayment invoice. Post the prepayment invoice that was just created. All of those steps that we just did. Now, before giving it this command, let's just go back and find this sales order this time and kind of look on it before and after we have run this. So we will use the 35 one instead. And we can see here there's no prepayment invoice created, nothing in here. Now we go back and we tell it to do this. What we can see now is how it starts to kind of work through. Just as I mentioned, this is just using a layer just below the user interface. So it's actually kind of, starting typing, looking at things, finding different sales orders to work with and doing all of that stuff as it goes on. I will speed it up a little bit so we come into the end of the process and then we can take a look at it. So here it actually has stopped. It has created the prepayment proposal and it has confirmed the sales order, but it still hasn't created the prepayment invoice. And it has tried a couple of times and it kind of just takes a pause and asks me, do you really want me to do this? And I just need to go in again and type yes on it. But it's worth noticing this because it's a pause in the process, which probably will affect us later on when we do automation as well. Okay, so now it says it's done. So let's go in and have a check what the result was. So we start by selecting and refreshing the sales order that we had before. We go into invoices. We can see that we have prepayment invoice enabled, which means that the prepayment proposal is created. And if we go in and see on it, we can see that we have it here. You can't post it anymore. It's posted. Then it has done its job. So from here, what we would like to do now is to build this into the Power Platform stuff as well, and kind of leverage the capabilities, and not only being able to do what we did now via chatting, but more via automating. So let's start with publishing this agent. We'll publish it. And then we'll go to make.powerapps.com instead. Now, what I would like to do is to, from my prepayment solution, here, I built a little app, just as we did in my previous video. So if you want to see all of the steps on how to do this, you can go to that video. And here we have an app just displaying sales order, header, B3 data entity as tables. So what we want to be able to do now is to kind of mark a couple of these and run that process that we had on them. This view is just showing us open orders, so they would all be suitable for the scenarios that we were running here. So what you need to do then is that you need to build a Powerautomate. So if we go back to our prepayment solution, and we'll create a Powerautomate from here. So what we do in here is that we select when a row is selected. We'll create it from that. And then we find our sales order header V3 table. Then we go in here and we select Copilot Studio. And we'll select execute agent and wait. That means that we will actually get a response from to the Powerautomate from Copilot as well. Otherwise, you would just send it to Copilot and just don't know what happens at all. What we then need to do is to find our Dynamics 365 prepayment agent. There we go. There we have it. And we need to give it a message. Now, I have prepared a message, and it's exactly the same message as we used in the chat first. We create the payment proposal for the sales order dynamic. That means that it will pick the sales order that we execute the Powerautomate from. And it will pick the legal entity that sales order is connected to. And then we set the prepayment type to percentage and the percentage value to 50% and the sales category to payments, all of the stuff that we did before as well. If you then, of course, want to build this from scratch later on, you can select these values here from dynamic content. You have them in there. So it's just click them and you will get them in there. So with that said, you just save this. I might need to set a name as well. So I'll call this create repayments, like that. And I'll save that as well. Now, let's just make sure that this Powerautomate is also updated and enabled. It is enabled. So what we can do then is that we go back to our little app here. We refresh that. And we select a sales order that we want to run this on. So I'll apply this with this. I mark that sales order. And here we have our little Powerautomate. So we run this on it. And it starts to run. What we can do then is that we can go back to Power Platform Admin Center and we access the flow. We can go to runs. We see that we have just triggered a new run for this Powerautomate and it's waiting. So this will probably take just as long time as running it through the chat did. So I'll speed this up a little bit until it's done. And it's done. So let's take a look here. As you might remember, we selected execute and wait, meaning that we are getting the response back to it. So we can kind of read the summary here just as we would get in the chat, the same text that it executed here. So it's telling us that it created a prepayment proposal, super. It's telling us that the sales order is confirmed, but it did have some issues here with creating the prepayment invoice and failed. But still, the Powerautomate and all of the steps are succeeded. And this is a bit of the issue with this approach. Let's just, for the sake of it, take a look on the sales order itself in F&O as well. We can see prepayment proposal. It's there. We got the 50%. Super. We can see that we can access the prepayment invoice, but it's still not posted. So it made a lot of the steps, but not all of it. So this is probably the biggest concern with all of this. I mean, Microsoft has opened up a really nice layer for us now where we can access all of the actions, all of the tables without writing a single line of code. But as it is right now, it all goes through the MCP server, all through Copilot, and then it's AI handling it. And in many, many scenarios, it's really good to use the AIs, but the AI is not consistent. So if you're thinking about traditional automation, where something has to happen exactly the same time all of the time, you might not want to use this at this point of time because the AI is not consistent. However, I mean, I'm hoping that they will open up this layer for more traditional automation later on as well. And there are a lot of good scenarios as well where you don't really need that same consistency in it, which it's super good for. So that was all from me for today. Thank you guys super much for listening in and have fun trying this out.